So let's talk about setting goals, and I also want to tie it to personal development, and you'll see how I'm going to do it as I progress here. Setting goals. We need to take a look into the future. There are 4 things to consider in terms of attitude. One is how you feel about the past. Best advice I can give you on that is treat the past as a school. Let it teach you the mistakes you've made, the things that went wrong, the things that didn't work. Don't use the past as a burden to carry, and don't use the past as a club to beat yourself to death. Past losses, past failures, past mistakes. But let the past be a school. Tough school maybe. We've all been through some tough stuff. So if you feel good about the past, draw from it for experience and let it teach you. Then next is how you feel about the future. We've got to have the future well designed. The future is called the promise. And here's what we teach in our leadership series. The promise of the future can be an awesome force for your own future. The promise of the future, designing the future. There's 2 ways to face the future. One is with apprehension, and the other is with anticipation. I promise you, in my travels around the world, most people face the future with apprehension. And here's why. They don't have it well designed. They've sort of left that up to someone else to fix. But here's the best way to face the future, with anticipation. And you can face the future with anticipation if the future is clear, if the future is well designed. And I would like to have you consider some thoughts with me that help me to really change my future by giving it some thought and some consideration. And here it is. In setting goals, it's very simple. Number 1, decide what you want. You just take a little time. You sit down and say, what do I want? What kind of skills do I want? What kind of income do I want for the future? What would I like? Where would I like to go? Places I'd like to visit. Habits I'd like to acquire. Skills I'd like to have. You just take a little time to think about what you want. Economics, friendships, people you'd like to meet, places you'd like to go. You just take some time. And then I suggest, when you've thought about what you want for the future, make a list. Just jot it all down. It's really a very simple process. And then here's number 3. Keep all the old lists. I'm telling you, this served me so well, keeping my old list of goals. I look back now 10, 20 years ago at goals I set, lists I made, and I smile now because here's what I thought was so important, 20 years ago. Now some of those things aren't even on my list. I've got a new list. I've grown. I've changed. I've matured. But I give you that advice. Decide what you want. Number 2, write it down. Number 3, keep the old lists. And then here's number 4. When you get something that's on one of these lists, check it off. Part of the fun of having a list is checking it off. And then if you can add some drama to checking it off, see, that's what really helps. I set a goal to go to Spain many, many years ago. And when I finally made my first trip to Spain, I had that journal with me that had that list in it. And while I had my journal on my lap, waiting for the wheels to touch down in Madrid, I waited until the wheels touched the runway, and I checked it off. Just adding a little drama. So, part of the fun of having a list is checking it off. Now, here's what's important about the lists and designing your future. If the future gets clear, the price gets easier. Because you got to remember, for every promise, there's a price to pay. Everybody's got to pay the price. Everybody's got to do the deal. Everybody's got to do the disciplines. Everybody has to pay. But here's what I've discovered. If the promise is clear and powerful, the price is easy to pay. The price is some classes. The price is a few books. The price is a few disciplines. The price is finding something that'll make your life better, make you grow, make you change, make you develop. So the first part of the key is to design the promise. Then, what is the price to pay? I'm telling you, the price will be easy. Anybody in my audience can pay it, no matter where you are, where you come from. Color doesn't matter, religion doesn't matter, where you grew up doesn't matter, circumstances don't matter. I'm telling you, if you'll make the promise of the future clear for yourself, the things you want, the places you want to go, the things you want to have, the person you want to become, the skills you want, the homes you want, the future you want, the friends you want, all of the values of life that you could possibly want. If you'll make that clear, make those lists, and be serious about it, I promise you it's an easy price to pay. Anybody can pay it. And the best advice I can give you is, if I can do it, you can do it. Farm boy from Idaho, raised in obscurity, I changed my life, turned it upside down, turned it all around, found economics, found future, found promise, and if I can do it, you can do it. So, start setting your goals and see if you can't get a better excitement going for the things you want to accomplish for the future. One of the major reasons for setting goals is for what they make of you in achieving them. My teacher advised me when I first got started at age 25, he said, "Jim, why don't you set a goal to become a millionaire?" He said, "It's got a nice ring to it. You know, enough zeros to impress your accountant." And he said, "I'm here to help you. You're only 25 years old. You've been to 1 year of college. You've got a beautiful family, every reason to do it. Why don't you set a goal to become a millionaire?" And he said, "Here's why." And I thought, he doesn't need to teach me why. Wouldn't it be nice to have $1 million? He said, "No, then you'll miss it." He said, "Here's why. For what it will make of you to achieve it." I'm telling you, that statement changed my life. Set the kind of goals that will make something of you to achieve them. He said, "Now, once you become a millionaire, what's important is not the money." I thought, that's kind of strange teaching. He said, "Honest, it isn't important." He said, "You could just give the money away." Now, I did better than that. I lost it all. By the time I was 31, I was a millionaire. By the time I was 33, I was broke. And I'll tell you a little bit about that story later. But when I lost all my money, guess what? I found out Mr. Schoaf was right. What was valuable was not the money. What was valuable was what I became to earn the money. The skills I had, the knowledge I had about the marketplace, the values that I had going for me. They were more valuable than the money. And here's an important statement to remember. It's not what you get that makes you valuable. It's what you become. So part of the key here is to set the kind of goals that will make something of you. Don't set them too low so that you don't have to grow and you don't have to read and you don't have to try and you don't have to stretch. Don't set them too low. And then don't sell out. Don't go for something that's going to cost you your virtue or cost you your values or sell out your principles. There's a good middle road here to follow. Goals that will inspire, goals that will help you grow, change, develop, and become better than you are.
I want to talk a little bit about goals on the line of how do you lose 37 pounds and write a book. I'm just going to kind of give you that as an example. For 24 years of my adult life, by choice, I weighed well over 200 pounds. I say by choice because, you see, I have never accidentally eaten anything. I mean, it's always been deliberate. And when I choose to eat too much today, I have chosen to weigh too much tomorrow. You can choose to set goals and realize your potential, or you can choose not to set them. Now, if you choose not to set them, you got to understand that the consequences are not going to be good down the road. For 24 years, I was going to lose that weight. As a matter of fact, in 24 years, I lost several thousand pounds of weight. How many of you already know exactly what I'm talking about? But it wasn't until I wrote it down, put a date on it, listed the obstacles I had to overcome, identified the people, the groups, the organizations I needed to work with, spelled out a plan of action, set that time limit in there, and identified all of the benefits to me. It was only when I did that that the goal became a reality, and I lost the weight. For 10 or 15 years, I was going to write a book. You know anybody who's going to do just a whole lot of things, folks? I was going to write a book. But it wasn't until I got busy writing the book and writing the plans first before the book ever materialized. Now, if it sounds like I'm trying to sell you on having goals, how many of you are getting close already? How many of you are becoming convinced right quick like that you need to have those goals? There's no question about it. The immortal J.C. Penney many, many years ago said, "Give me a stock clerk with a goal, and I'll give you a man who will make history. But give me a man without a goal, and I'll give you a stock clerk. Now, the interesting thing is goals do not care who has them. Let me give you a classic example of the way they work. In 1950, a war-torn, devastated Japan, a nation which had lost an incredibly high percentage of its young men. Their cities were in ruins. They had been bombed out. But in 1950, they got together. They, meaning industry and government, got together and set a goal. The goal was we're going to be the #1 nation in the world during the 1950s in the production of textiles. In 1959, ladies and gentlemen, they accomplished that objective. In 1960, they set another goal. We're going to be the #1 nation in the world in the production of steel. Now, when you understand there's no iron ore in Japan of any significance, there's no coal of any significance there, we're going to be the #1 nation in the world in the production of steel, it seemed like an absurd goal, and yet they reached their objectives. They had taken all of the steps. In 1970, the Japanese set another goal. They said during the 70s, we'll be the #1 nation in the world in the production of automobiles. They missed it, folks. 1 year. It took them until 1980. In 1980, they set another goal. And this time their goal was, we're going to be the #1 nation in the world in the production of computers and electronics. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, you absolutely must have those goals. You got to write them down. You got to put a date on it. You got to identify those obstacles. You've got to identify the people, the groups you need to work with. You got to find out what it is you need to know. You got to develop a plan of action, and you got to write it down. What's in it for me? Now, that's a formula that I have just given you, pure and simple. Now, if I were to ask you what 3 times 3 was, there is a person here who could not instantly answer it. But if I were to ask you what is 5,128 times 2,165, odds are enormous that very few of you could pop out the answer that quickly. But if I were to say to you, get your pencil and paper out, figure it out, then all of you could figure it out. Why? You know the formula. Now, you see, if you know the formula, it really doesn't make any difference, ladies and gentlemen, what the goal really is. When I started to write the book, I took precisely the same steps that I'm talking about. I wrote down the objective. I wrote down the time I completed or expected to complete the book. I identified the obstacles there. And yes, I know this is repetitious. It's the mother of learning. I wrote out and identified the people, the groups, the organizations I needed to work with. I devised a plan of action to do it. I spelled out what I needed to know, and I wrote it all down, what's in it for me. You see, the basic problem is most people, when they're working on their job, they get to thinking, you know, I really ought to be spending time at home with my family. And then when they're at home with their family, they get to thinking, you really ought to be out there working for my family. And so when they're out there working for their family, their mind is back home. And when they're back home, their mind is back out there in the field. And then they tell everybody, well, I don't ever have time to do anything. No wonder you're always traveling. You see, the basic problem is not lack of time. It is lack of direction. We all have exactly the same amount of time, whether we're a millionaire or a pauper. All of us have 24 hours every single day. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, we must have goals if we're going to do anything. Goals do a lot of things. For example, they enable you to chase the blues away. I've never known anybody who was truly depressed who had specific and long-range goals. And what goals do is they create activity. And you see, activity, as you work towards reaching them, creates the very excitement which you need in order to accomplish or reach your objectives. The psychologists put it this way: logic will not change an emotion, but action will. And as you get busy working towards these dreams of yours, and yes, you absolutely must have your dreams, ladies and gentlemen. And what we're going to do is look at the ways you build a foundation underneath those dreams. Several years ago, they did an experiment with a number of college students. And in this particular experiment, they let them go to sleep, and they hooked these brain machines up to them. With these brain machines, they could determine precisely within a matter of seconds when the student went to sleep. Then they could tell when that student started to dream. And as the student would start to dream, they would awaken him or her. And then they'd let them go back to sleep, and that is no problem. But when they started to dream, they would awaken them again. And with those brainwave machines, they can tell exactly when they start to dream. At the end of one night of this kind of treatment, many of the students were nervous and fidgety. At the end of 2 nights of this kind of treatment, where they had a reasonable amount of sleep, but no dreaming, they became very irritable and very short and very cross. At the end of just 3 nights of a reasonable amount of sleep, but no dreaming, they could tell that some of them were headed for some psychological difficulties. And so what they did was they aborted the experiment. Now, about 24 hours later, most of the students were back to normal. Within a week, all of them had returned 100%. But the experiment proved something very conclusively, and that's this. When you're asleep, ladies and gentlemen, you need your dreams. I'm here to tell you that when you're wide awake, you also need your dreams. You must have your goals. You'll never make it as a wandering generality. You must become a meaningful specific. If you're going to work tomorrow because that's what you did yesterday, you're not going to be as good tomorrow as you were yesterday because now you're 2 days older and no closer to the goal which you do not have. You can't make it as a wandering generality. Most people understand you got to become a meaningful specific. It reminds me of an experiment done some little while ago by Jean-Henri Fabre, the great French naturalist. He took a number of processionary caterpillars, so named because they follow each other in a procession. And he lined them around a flower pot until they formed a never-ending circle. And they started going round and round 24 hours that first day. And then they went the next day and the next. And by about the third or the fourth day, he put some pine needles into the center of that flower pot. That's the food of the processionary caterpillar. They kept going round and round, 7 full days and 7 full nights. They went round and round until they literally dropped dead from starvation and exhaustion. With an abundance of food less than 6 inches away, they had starved to death because they confused activity with accomplishment. You've got some friends that are in the same shape. They're busy all the time. They're going, and they're here and they're there and they're somewhere else. But they never really accomplish anything because they don't have those specific, clearly identifiable objectives. You gotta have those goals.
Here's the next one. Look around. You might have overlooked some people that need to be recognized. You might have overlooked some talent that you could be using to help in the training and conduct meetings. Don't miss some of the gifts that are close by you. Look around and say, who's doing a good job that maybe I've missed this last year? Look around and see if there aren't some people who need to be lifted up, who need your inspiration, who need your presence, who need your time. Here's the next one. Look down to the work. Look down to the soil that's ready for the seeds of opportunity that you will share by your voice and your invitation and your language and your meetings, your presentation. Look down to the work that your hands can work miracles. Look down to the task and see if there aren't some things you might have missed this past year you can pick up on this year and work miracles for yourself, for your future, for your organization. Here's the next one. It's a word of caution. Look out for the enemy that's on the outside as well as the enemy that's on the inside. Look out for your own thoughts that might deceive you, saying you're too short, you're too tall, you're too old, you've never done it before. What makes you think you can do it now? Look out for the temptation. I've told the story and it bears repeating. An ancient story that said there were two nice people. This is not a story of one bad person and one good person. The storyteller says this is a story of two nice people. However, and I want you to underline the word however, because that's the drama of life. However, one built his house on the rock and the other built his house on the sand. And sure enough, the storms came as they always do. And the one that built his house on the rock was saved. The one that built his house on the sand was lost. Here's what it means. Nice people can make careless decisions. Nice people can make foolish decisions. None of us are above temptation. That's why the great prayer says, lead us around temptation. Hopefully deliver us from the evil. Tempted to cross the line. A customer shows up across the street from where you live. And it's so easy to say, rather than being taken care of by someone who lives so far away, I can take care of you because I live just across the street. Don't listen to the tempter. Stay on track. Build on the rock. Look out for your own mind that would tell you your dreams can't come true. Look out for your own thoughts that would tell you that it's not going to work that well for you. Look out for that. Here's the next one. Look inside. Some of you have just started to develop your talents and your skills and your abilities. Some of you have done enough to reach this level, to reach these tables, to be in this room. But I promise you, if you go home and take another look inside, here's the question to ask. What else could I develop of my mind and my spirit and my talents and my ability that would make me more valuable to myself, to my family, to my organization? What else could I do? How far could I reach inside for something I haven't found yet? Here's the next one. Look up to the God that made us all, to a higher power that's still within reach. Draw on that spiritual part of human existence and human life. It'll work miracles. Once in a while I get a letter. Guess what it says? Dear Mr. Rohn, while you travel the world, please remember, we pray for you. I thought, wow, that's what I felt at 39,000 feet. when I was a little weary and tired, somebody in South Africa was saying a prayer for Jim Rohn. All of that unseen miracle stuff that we all touch at times in our lives. I'm asking you to look up and draw on that experience, that comfort, that uniqueness that makes us who we are.